So his thesis is entitled Cleveland and the Browns, an Oral and Narrative History. And for those of you who don't know much about Cleveland, it's oriented right against Lake Erie, in the top of Ohio. So it's very much a city that's oriented with the lake. People refer to it. Most people, Cleveland, like Detroit, is a very poor city. A lot of people spend a lot of time outdoors. And the Browns Stadium, a number of places here that are referred to are right on the lake. So the city has a great association with that.
That's the mistake on the lake.
I like that. As I'm walking from the Galleria in downtown Cleveland to the West 3rd parking lot next to the Cleveland Browns Stadium, I realize that my face hurts too much from the cold. I'm afraid I have to cancel my appointment to interview a group of guys who've been tailgating together for 23 years. If I keep going, I'll be in the hospital from frostbite. Luckily, the Great Lakes Science Center happens to be open on a Sunday morning. I go inside and warm up for 20 minutes, knowing that I'm over halfway to my destination, the heart of the Browns fan experience. Thousands of people have come to stand outside the stadium and hang out with their buddies. 4 hours from now, the last place Browns will lose to the second last place Bengals, and I can't help but wonder why so many people drive long distances, stand outside in sub-zero weather, and live and die with a team that has never made it to the Super Bowl. I finally spot the group of guys who look fortified by their multi-layers of clothing and by a little alcohol. They're about to give me insight into why the Browns continue to sell out their stadium despite a 44-year championship drought, while playing their games in the most economically suffering market. On the surface, I can't understand why these fans have been subjecting themselves to this for decades, and why it is the highlight of their week. There is a reason the team has spawned the largest fan organization of any major sports franchise. In order to understand the significance of the Browns, it is necessary to understand their history and context. Cleveland and the Browns, an oral and narrative history, examines the phenomenon of fandom and the relation of fans to a locality, focusing on the Cleveland Browns football team and the city of Cleveland. Narrative, oral histories, and commentaries from secondary sources reveal insights into the special connection between the Browns fans and Cleveland. As a result, this thesis details how and why the intensity of team support prevailed even as the city's fortunes declined. James Wright set one of his most well-known poems in Martin's Ferry before the collapse of the steel industry. Martin's Ferry, the birthplace of Browns legend Lou Graza, is a microcosm of Cleveland. Both were booming Ohio steel towns. They have been in decline for 50 years. And here's the poem. Autumn begins in Martin's Ferry, Ohio. In the Shreve High football stadium, I think of Pollock's nursing long beers in Tiltonsville, and gray faces of Negroes in the blast furnace of Benwood, and the ruptured night watchmen of Wheeling Steel, dreaming of heroes. All the proud fathers are ashamed to go home. Their women cluck like starved pullets, dying for love. Therefore, their sons grow suicidally beautiful at the beginning of October, and gallop terribly against each other's bodies. Wright's poem evokes the blue-collar, ethnically diverse fan base that attended high school football games in Martin's Ferry and Cleveland Browns games from the team's inception in 1946. Browns fans mirrored Cleveland's demographics. Many were not far removed from Eastern Europe and the southern United States. They were the factory workers who fueled Cleveland's heavy industries. Like the spectators in Wright's poem, after laboring at blast furnaces, they nursed beers and dreamt of heroes. The Browns' dominance, unequaled in professional football, gave their fans real-life heroes. Paul Brown's stated goal was to create a dynasty, the New York Yankees of professional football. He achieved his mission, winning the title during his first season and qualifying for 10 consecutive championships. By doing so, he created a dynamic between the Browns and their fans that is unique in American sports culture. Furthermore, many of the players were from similar backgrounds. They were relatable, helping to make cheering for the Browns a family ritual, like attending a high school game. There are fewer and fewer fans who remember the Browns of the 40s and 50s. In the context of present-day Cleveland, hearing the fans' stories of players like Otto Graham, Lou Graza, and Dante Lavelli was fascinating. The memories recounting here show how rooting for the Browns when they were winning championships enabled blue-collar fans to transcend the downtrodden mood of autumn begins in Martins Ferry, Ohio. Browns fandom gave Clevelanders, whose lives were a daily struggle, with the feeling that they were part of something heroic. These memories are worth preserving, and they are a history of Cleveland from a limited but powerful perspective. Their stories range from Ruth Moss, the grandchild of Jewish immigrants from Russia, who had season tickets for 40 years starting in 1946, and used to freeze at games, but it didn't matter. To Paul Terry, whose grandparents immigrated from Sicily, who remembers when the players didn't wear face masks, and the time Otto Graham got clobbered, stitched up, and went right back out on the field. The interviews in Cleveland and the Browns in oral and narrative history add depth and details that are missing from the news stories. The effect is a more fully realized academic narrative. Dennis Goodman's description of Paul Brown the day after the Browns won their first NFL championship captures the joy Brown felt, making the legendary public figure more relatable. Howard Besser's behind-the-curtains tale of Carl Stokes shows the extreme resistance Stokes encountered from the city's police force and business community. Mike Brown's account adds resonance to the Browns' last game before the move. The oral history that comprises this thesis articulates what it means to be a fan, what it means to be a citizen of a major American city, and the relationship between the two.
You're going to give him the Browns?
No, I have to wait to get here. So do you want to ask Carter and
Yeah.
and then we'll...
We have just a couple of students here who have theses in progress. So we'll start with you, Marta, since you're senior in progress. And then Chrissy, if you want to just come up and talk a little bit about what you're doing.